What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. This intro is quite a bit different because in this video we are building this hollow cedar strip paddleboard. Now you may not know this, but I love to paddleboard. If you've seen a video of mine, you've seen my paddleboards hanging up on my shop walls. But I also really like to build things in my shop and show you guys how to build seemingly complex projects in the simplest, most affordable way. And this project is no different. I want to show you guys you don't need to be a pro level woodworker to make this happen. You don't need every tool at your disposal. I think you'd be really surprised at how few tools we use throughout this project. So yeah, this video is just an overview of a much larger project. I have a 10 or 12 video series on how to build this thing. So if you're interested in that, be sure to like this video. Let me know in the comment section. I'm kind of gauging interest based on this video. So even if this is a project that you don't see yourself doing, I can guarantee you're gonna learn something. We're gonna be doing things quite a bit differently on this one. So let's head to the shop. Let's get started on this build. Speaking of learning something, today's video is sponsored by Woodworkers Guild of America. Thought this was a very fitting sponsorship for how much woodworking we're about to be doing in this project. Woodworkers Guild of America is your go-to online resource for woodworking instruction, ideas, and information. Their website has a huge selection of woodworking tutorials that is constantly being updated with fresh content. You'll learn things like cabinet and furniture building, joinery, wood turning, table saw and bandsaw techniques, clamping and gluing, shop safety. They have content for beginner and advanced level woodworkers, so no matter where you are in your journey, they've got you covered. I've personally been watching the tutorials on wood joinery. This is something I've been wanting to improve on for some future projects in the shop. I've also been learning about wood finishing for a desk project that I've been working on. Members will also have access to the live streams, Q&As, along with being able to interact with the instructors and other members that are part of the community. And the first 1,000 of you to click the link in the description below will receive a year of premium membership to Woodworkers Guild of America for only $1.49, which is really a no-brainer. So be sure to click the link, join the community. Thank you so much to Woodworkers Guild of America for sponsoring this video. Let's get to building this paddleboard. All right guys, so the paddleboards that we're gonna be building in this video are designed by Sliver Paddleboards. I really like the design of their paddleboards compared to other builders. I also really like that the plans are right there on their website for free. It gave me a ton of confidence to be able to read through that before purchasing anything when I was building my first board. So what we did was we ordered the PDF files, we took them to FedEx and got them printed out ourselves. If you want to save a little bit of time, just order the paper prints. And if you want to save a lot of frustration, just order the CNC Fishbone frame from them. It'll come to you and that's going to save you a lot of time. So yeah, we're going to be doing several things all at the same time. We're going to be working on our assembly table. That's the structure that this entire paddleboard will be built on. We're going to be working on the Fishbone frame, and we're also going to be sourcing the lumber that we need for this project. So yeah, we're going to start working on the assembly table first, and then we'll get out the template for the Fishbone frame and start getting that cut out. So let's get to it. Before we cut anything out, we're going to build 2 dollies. That way we can move our boards around pretty easily. And then we're going to move on to the assembly table. The assembly table will be built to match your specific Fishbone frame. You'll see this as we go along. Carts are done. Now we're working on the assembly table. Our table will be 12 feet long, 2 feet wide, and now we're about to put the slats across. To minimize waste, we ended up cutting out each individual piece of the template. That way we could glue it down to a single sheet of plywood. And we're done cutting out all those pieces. Not gonna lie, that really sucked. We cut out 101 pieces throughout this. Just ordered the CNC Fishbone. I have all the ribs just loosely cut out. That's the rest of them down there. I'm about to clean them up on the bandsaw. You could totally do this with a jigsaw, but bandsaw just makes it a little bit easier. Now that the spine is cut out, it's time to glue them together just like this. It's a fairly simple process. We're just going to get 2 pieces of 1/4-inch plywood and glue it to the front and the back of these 2 pieces. Alright, we got that clamped. We'll let that set up and then we'll do the other side. Once the spine is put together, we can work on the fitment of the individual ribs. Once those fit nicely, we're actually going to disassemble the fishbone frame. We're going to put it up for a while and get ready to work on the top and bottom decking, which is what the fishbone frame will be glued to later on in the project. Since we're doing this project as cheaply as possible and buying all of our lumber at Lowe's, we did have to trim some tongues and grooves off of some of the lumber. This also meant that we had to cut down the center of our boards to get 2 boards out of 1 board, to avoid having to plane down a 1-inch board all the way down to 1/4 inch. It just doesn't make sense. It's not an impossible task, it just takes a little finesse with the table saw. We're using a planer to clean up the boards after running them through the table saw, but after building 2 of these paddleboards, I really don't think this is 100% necessary. With a hand plane or a belt sander and a little bit of extra time, I think you could get the same result. So don't lose heart if you don't have access to a planer. We cut a few strips of light and dark cedar to use as accent strips, and we just swapped them in and out about 100 times as we were both very indecisive about how we wanted our boards to look. Once we figure out what we want the board to look like, it's time to tape all the boards together to get them ready for this massive 12-foot long glue up. Okay. For this clamping jig, we're using pieces of scrap plywood and OSB. They're about 2.5 inches wide or so. One thing that you can't see in this video is that the bottom of these pieces are covered in painter's tape. That way they don't stick to our decking when we do this glue up. Alright, so I have all our pieces just running across. They're about 8 inches apart or so. Doesn't have to be exact. And then we cut a bunch of these little 4-inch pieces that we're gonna just screw to these pieces just like that. And you'll see how this works in a minute, but as we move the board this way, it'll tighten up the whole plank. Just gonna run it down.
Some time later.
Sweet!
I like it.
Yeah, that's gonna look really good.
That stripe looks awesome.
Alright, now that the top and the bottom decking are put together, we need to flatten these panels. You're going to have a lot of little high and low spots throughout here that we need to get flat. Now you don't want to go crazy here. It doesn't have to be like absolutely perfect at this point, so that when we go to attach our fishbone frame, we have a nice flat surface to adhere to when we do that. So to do this, I'm going to be using a hand plane. If you don't have a hand plane, you can also use a belt sander. I like using the hand plane. It goes really quickly and doesn't make all the noise and dust that the belt sander does. So yeah, I'm gonna get to work with the hand plane, getting this thing flattened out, and we'll move on from there. During the milling and the gluing up of the cedar, the knots in the wood tend to fall out. I found the best solution for filling knot holes is a mixture of epoxy resin and coffee grounds. This works incredibly well and it hides the knot perfectly. I really like how it did on this board. You can see all these are knot holes here and here, all the way to those 4 up front. Filled everyone with epoxy and coffee, and it looks really good.
Our bottom decking is almost ready to be attached to the Fishbone frame. We just need to cut out the bottom decking into the shape that our board needs to be. And that's where this template comes in. We're just going to trace it to the board and cut it out with a jigsaw.
All right, we have the outline all cut out, starting to look like a board. We're getting ready to set up the rocker table. So now instead of it being a flat surface like it's been to set up the panels, we need to set it up to support the shape of our board all the way down. Our table is
Pretty good.
officially level. All right, we got the rocker table all set up. We got our panel back on here, and what we're doing is we got our ribs back out. We're gonna set up the Fishbone frame on top of our rocker table. We're gonna make any like small adjustments that we need to make just to make sure that the bottom panel is sitting nice and flush on the rocker table, and everything is just the way we want it before we start this glue up. So yeah, we're gonna start test fitting all that. Little sneak preview. Let's check out Will's board over here. This is what it's gonna end up looking like. His is already attached. It's all glued up and looking pretty. This thing looks awesome. Nice and light. Oh dude, that's awesome. Oh my goodness. Forearm pump is real. Alright, keep coming. Place it on the first. All right, we got the frame all weighted down. I know this looks kind of crazy, but I feel like this is a little closer to real life than just having every clamp and tool at your disposal. We just kind of used whatever we had to get it all put together, and this seemed to work really well. It's been 24 hours. The glue is rock solid. I'm gonna get all the clamps and the weight removed, and we'll see how she looks. I need to show you guys how we're gonna cut up the wood strips that are gonna make up the rails of our paddleboard. If you look real close, you can see these light and dark strips. These are the strips that we're gonna mill up today that make up the rails of our paddleboard. Before we cut anything, let's head over to the table so I can show you kind of where we're headed. That way you can kind of visualize what we're doing and the whole purpose of these bead and cove strips that we're about to mill up. All right, the first strip that we're gonna install on the board is called the outline strip. It's just a simple strip. It's cut at 3/8 of an inch by 1/4 of an inch. And it fits right here underneath the notches of our ribs of our Fishbone frame. I know y'all have been wondering what's going there. It just sits flush with the curved edge of our rib, just like that. Now the next strip we'll install is called the foundation strip. It's the foundation for all of our bead and cove strips. If you look real close, it has a flat edge on the bottom, and then it has a bead edge on the top, and we're gonna mount that right next to our outline strip, just like that. After our foundation strip is installed, we're just gonna stack our bead and cove strips right on top of that, one at a time. It'll look something like this. And now you can see the purpose of these bead and cove strips that we're gonna mill out. They all kind of stack on top of each other and kind of roll around. So they fit nicely around the curved edges of our fishbone frame. So yeah, just wanted to show you guys that so you can kind of get an idea of what we're doing, why we're doing it. So with all that said, let's go mill up some strips.
To glue all the bead and cove strips, I'm using these homemade clamps made from 4-inch PVC. Not only is this the cheapest way to do it, it's also the best way. You won't find a clamp that works better than these. I can't get over how well these work for this project. Now it's time to trim up the ends of the bead and cove strips right at the last rib to make room for the nose and the tail blocking. This will basically be a big chunk of cedar that will join up with our rails and make the nose and the tail really strong. Now we're gluing in the blocking for the handle that we'll install later. This is basically just the internal structure that gives the handle its strength. And now we're gluing in this green foam for the Finbox that we'll be gluing in later on. You can use wood or foam. We're just using foam here just to save a little bit of weight.
That's a lot better.
All right guys, we got the paddleboard on its side. We need to start working on shaping up our rails. Now for this part of the project, I'm gonna be using my hand plane. You can use the belt sander if you'd like, but you're gonna need to switch to a much finer grit. I think we used like 36 grit or something like that on the nose and the tail, but that's just because we needed to burn through so much material quickly. We don't want to do that here. We just want to barely take off any material at all. So I switched to like 100, 150 grit with that. Keep that thing moving. You just don't want to burn through your rails. We're going to try to keep these as thick and as strong as possible. I'm going to start right back here where the bottom decking meets our rail. If you look right here, we still got quite a bit of decking sticking out. So I'm going to get my planer out, start trimming this up.
Throughout this project, you're going to find little cracks and gaps that need to be filled, little spots that just didn't get glued well. I found that the best way to treat these is with little super glue and sawdust. It dries in minutes, and after you sand it down, it blends in really, really well.
Alright guys, there's one last thing we need to do to our rails before we can put on our top decking, and I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. Basically, we need to flatten the top edge of our rail to create a mating surface for our top decking. If you imagine this is our top decking laid across this way, we need a good mating surface right here. Right now, this is just touching right here at the very tip. We're going to try to create a flat surface right there so that our top decking can mate and have plenty of room to hold on to so we can button this thing up. So let me show you how we're going to do that. All right, this rail is done. Let me give you a little up close shot. You see we got really nice transition from the rail to the rib. Now when we lay our top decking on top, we're gonna have a really nice transition right there. It looks really good. Now before we put the top decking on, I'm adding these blocks of foam just in the area where I'll be standing on the board. I didn't do this with my first board and it was a lot softer than I'd like it to be in the standing areas. So between the foam and a second layer of fiberglass in this area, it really helps stiffen things up. Now to attach the top decking, we're using a system of strongbacks and wooden wedges. The strongbacks are these 2x2 wooden dowels that go across the board that hold down the center of the top decking. And then we'll be using wooden wedges to hold down the edges around the perimeter of the board. This system works incredibly well. I'd highly recommend this over trying to use ratchet straps or something like that. If you're not nervous, you should be. I'm using PL Premium adhesive on the Fishbone frame, and then I'm using a mixture of thickened epoxy where the top panel meets the rails and attaches to the nose and the tail. I did want to mention how difficult this part of the build was for me to not only get this all clamped up, but also to film it I'd highly encourage you to have a friend help you out on this portion of the build. All your adhesive is trying to set up while you're trying to get this thing clamped. So it's much better to have somebody there to help you out. All right guys, we got it done. That was pretty stressful. I'm sweaty, stressed out, but we got it on. This system of the wedges and the strong backs, it works extremely well. I would highly suggest if you're doing this to go with this method. I know there are several ways to do it, but this works really well. I'm doing this all by myself and I had no problem getting it put together. It is a little bit stressful and you think you're gonna ruin it, but it's all together. The wedges are in place. They're holding down the top decking really well. All right guys, we are getting ready to do the final shaping on our paddleboard. This will be pretty similar to the way we did the bottom decking, except we're not going to be doing any kind of edge to it. We just want a nice smooth transition from our top decking into our rails. I'm going to start on these edges here, work them back. What we're looking for is the edge of our tape that we laid down. After I have these edges worked down the way I want them, we'll move to the nose and the tail and I'll show you how we're going to shape those. All right guys, that didn't take very long. The belt sander makes quick work of this. I think this looks really nice. Let's get the board flipped over and do the tail. All right guys, the nose and the tail are totally shaped. Those are done. The last thing I need to do, I'm going to run around the perimeter on this transition from the top deck to the rails. I'm going to do some light sanding there. I'll do a little sanding on the top decking in the bottom before we put the fiberglass on. But that's pretty much all we have left to do. You should already have a hole in your board for where your vent blocking will go. But at this point, your board is sealed up. Any major temperature changes could cause the board to expand or contract, which could damage your board. So make sure you have a hole in your board. This is how we'll know where the vent blocking is. We'll put this on when we go to do our fiberglass. So just wanted to mention that. Don't want anything to happen to your board. At this point in the build, we're done with the rocker table. We can start to disassemble that. And now I'm going to build just a really simple board holder so that we can get ready to fiberglass the board. All right guys, we just got done sanding. I think it looks really, really good. Now with the sanding, you don't have to work your way from 100 to 1,000 grit or anything like that. You don't have to go crazy. You'll be surprised the little imperfections that just disappear once you put on the fiberglass. We need to get ready for fiberglass. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get this thing wiped down. Let's get the sawdust off of it. I'm gonna use some denatured alcohol or acetone or something like that to wipe it down. So let's get to it. All right, it's time for fiberglass. All right, let's put the fiberglass back over. All right, really don't have to do much. Now we're gonna take the rest of our epoxy and get it on the board. All right guys, it is fully fiberglass. Everything looks really good. You're still gonna be able to see the weave in the epoxy. Not sure if you can see that or not. That's okay. You just wanna make sure you don't see any white spots because that's where the epoxy hasn't soaked into the fibers. A lot of times it'll be right along the tape line, right there. But man, this looks really good. Before it fully cures, we're gonna come back with a razor blade and we're gonna cut off our excess right here at the tape line. It's just a lot easier to do before it fully cures. The bottom of our board looks awesome. I love the way the wood grain looks. It's time to flip the board over and do it all over again. All right guys, the first hot coat is on. Looks really good. All the weave is filled in. Now we're gonna let this set up for a little bit, probably give it about an hour or so and check it. Once it gets tacky, we're gonna put that second coat on. We're not gonna let it fully cure. We'll come back in a little bit and add a second coat.
Tape it up.
Now that the board is fully fiberglass, we can install the handle and the Finbox. We're going to start by taping down these router guides so that we can accurately cut a hole for our handle.
All right guys, here goes.
This is another really nerve-wracking part of the build where you feel like you're about to destroy the board, but it's really not that difficult. That looks pretty. I mean, I did a really good job of cutting that fiberglass.
Yeah, it
It's
did.
super clean. All right, drop her in and see what it looks like.
Bombs away.
Oh, so perfect. That looks really good. All right. I just got to clean that up a bit.
Yeah.
And the process is exactly the same for the Finbox.
I decided to clamp the fin boxes in place. It's probably a good call. I could tell that I needed to press down pretty hard to get those to stay flush with the board. Now it's time to drill a hole for our vent plug. I know I haven't mentioned the vent plug much at all, but it's extremely important. It basically keeps your board from exploding when your board changes temperature. Now all there is left to do is tape off our fin box, our handle, and the vent plug, do the final coat of epoxy, and this board will be done. It's a super exciting day because it's launch day. We're finally done with the paddle boards. It's really exciting. We're gonna get them loaded up. We're gonna take them to the water and test these things out. I do want to quickly mention that this is the spot that Will picked out for the first launch. There are much better places to launch from, fewer alligators, but this is what Will picked.
It's trial by fire.
Guys, these boards feel so good. They're so solid. Feel nice underfoot. Some people like to put grip on the boards, but I honestly feel like I'm just fine barefoot on these things. I'm not slipping off the, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I feel good.
Solid?
Yeah.
Stable?
Solid, stable. I mean, I see where a grip could be useful.
Right.
So far, I don't feel like I need it.
Yeah. We're going exploring. Oh, dude. This is awesome.
Push off of the wall.
I think the rainforest up in here. This is awesome. Alright guys, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Really appreciate it if you stuck around this long. This video was a huge undertaking, took a lot of work to do. So I'd really appreciate it if you could hit like and subscribe on this video. Also be sure to let me know if you'd like to see the full build series, and we'll see you guys in the next video.